4 months with the LUMIX GH6. Here is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Also, this video is sponsored by Audio, music licensing, which I'll have more about later in this video. Now, this video is a talking head alert, and this is not to encourage you to purchase the GH6 or dissuade you from purchasing the GH6. This is just some observations that I've had after using the GH6 for about 4 months now. And thanks to LUMIX, who sent me the GH6 to test out and, see what this camera is all about. If you're new to this channel, my name is Caleb and I've been doing freelance videos since 2012. I've been using the GH5 since it came out, just recently switched to the S5. I'm still using the GH5 every once in a while, but I've also been testing out the GH6. And if you're interested in any of those cameras and learning more about them, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like I said earlier, this is about the good, the bad, and the ugly about the GH6, and we're just gonna go right in that order. So we're gonna start with the good. And the very first thing that I've noticed with the GH6 is that the Vlog is the best that I've used on any of these cameras. Now, partially, I think that is because this is a fully 10-bit camera. You really have to dig in like the MP4 section to find any 8-bit settings. Now, even the 10-bit 420 that you have on this camera, the Vlog is just absolutely the best I've used on any LUMIX camera. On the GH5, and I've said this so many times in these videos, I very rarely used Vlog L. I know a lot of people have had a lot of success with Vlog L on the GH5 and the GH5S, but I just never got into it. But on the GH6, I've been pretty much using the Vlog color profile exclusively. There's a few times where I used natural, but the 10-bit capabilities of the GH6, I've been using Vlog and I've been loving it. And I've primarily been using the Panasonic conversion LUT to get it to more of a Rec 709. And even when you monitor it with the Rec 709 LUT that's built into the camera, you're basically getting that image that you convert it to in your program. Like, I haven't really noticed a whole lot of difference in the image. I'm probably rambling on about nothing for some of you, but this is a very important step, and I've been so happy with the Vlog on the GH6. Now, another part of the good on the GH6, and I would actually purchase the GH6 just for this setting alone, especially making social media content for some companies, is that 5.8K open gate and the ability to use the full sensor, whether you're shooting vertical or whatever crop that you want to use. You have that full sensor, that full height and width that you're able to use for those social media clips. Now, I'm going to get into a detail here about this being a social media camera that is not so great, but this, if you are behind the camera and you are making social media content for companies or businesses or other creators, whatever that looks like for you, this is the camera that you should be using because of that 5.8K open gate. I'm just saying that feature alone is worth it. Another part of the good is the 4K 120. It is oh so good. But then you mix that with the IBIS that the GH6 has, the 7 stops of IBIS. Honestly, I don't think there's going to be a better camera for that type of footage if you want to shoot 4K 120 handheld without a gimbal or anything like that. I don't think there's going to be a better camera than the GH6. So you got to keep that in mind whether you're making content for yourself or you're making it for clients. That 4K 120, if you need that slow motion footage and you want a very minimal setup, the GH6 is probably going to be the way to go. All right, that's what I have for the good, and I think this might be a good time for a sponsor break. I've been using audio music licensing for a ton of my videos, and I absolutely think it is some of the highest quality music out there. I've used audio music on my YouTube vids, Reels, TikTok, and a bunch of client work as well. Audio wanted me to tell you about their Pro plan that includes everything you see on the screen right here for $199 per year. But right now, and only for a short time, they're running a 70% discount on this specific Pro plan. 70% off. I highly encourage you to take advantage of this while it lasts. Use the audio music link I have in the description and use the code PRO70 to receive 70% off the Pro plan. So we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's get into the bad about the GH6. And there's not a ton of bad about the GH6, but we're just going to be honest, and we have to be honest about this. The autofocus, I'd put it in probably the not good section. I know that there's been improvements made, and yes, it is better, but it's still not good. I'm putting it in the bad section. I think I've probably said this in a couple times, and this is where I come back to that like whole social media creation thing. I really feel like Lumix is missing out on an incredible opportunity for creators, like people who make YouTube videos or TikTok videos. I really think that they're missing out on the opportunity for those creators to use such an incredible camera because of that autofocus. Now, if the GH6, and I'm talking about content creators specifically, not, you know, people who are just behind the camera making films, that type of thing. If it had that autofocus, this camera would dominate the creator space, but instead they don't have that phase detect autofocus. It's still sketchy. The LUMIX GH6 isn't what it should have been. Now, I understand that this camera, I think that Lumix is going for more of a Netflix approved approach with this camera, more of a professional setting, but unfortunately I think in the creator space it misses the mark. So in that regard, I'm going to put it in the bad section, because there's this whole area that just is totally missed, and it all comes down to that autofocus. I mean, the image quality is spectacular, the settings are spectacular, shooting video with it, the feel of it, everything is spectacular about this camera, except for that autofocus. And another thing that I'm going to put in the bad is just it's still not good in low light. There's really not much else to say about it. It's just not great in low light. GH5 wasn't great in low light, and I don't feel like the GH6 is that much improved. So that's what I have for the bad. Let's get into the ugly. And the reason that I picked the ugly is because, first of all, part of that is the ugly image that you get sometimes with the dynamic range boost mode. Now, after 4 months of using the GH6, I still am not convinced and not happy with the dynamic range boost mode. I think I would still much rather have like a dual ISO, and I mean, personal preference, right? I mean, if it's working for you, that's fantastic. It's not working for me. I'm not convinced of it. I'm not a big fan of it. I feel like putting that base ISO at 2000, I mean, that's already above kind of the range where you start getting noise in your image, and it doesn't clean up the image at all. So you're already at the point where you're introducing noise to the image. I feel like it's still grainy. I feel like it's still noisy. I don't see a huge improvement in like the highlight area and things like that. So I'm putting it in the ugly because I'm just not convinced about it. I'm not happy with the image that I'm getting with the dynamic range boost mode. And I'm not a super expert on it, but I feel like maybe some of those improvements can come with firmware updates maybe. But as it is right out of box, and after using it for a few months, it's not my jam. Now, another thing I'm gonna put in the ugly section, and this is pretty nitpicky. I mean, take it for what it's worth, but I'm just gonna go with the size of it. Now, we're kind of in a area where, you know, if you're getting into cameras this big, I mean, why not toss a full frame sensor on there? To have this big of a micro four thirds camera. So coming from the micro four thirds system, you're kind of used to a little bit more of like a compact system. Like it travels well, the lenses are tiny, everything on it is just a little bit more compact. But now we're kind of getting into the bigger body, and I'm not saying I don't like this. I mean, I do like this. I love the feel of it. I mean, the fan does not bother me. The screen is amazing, but I think a lot of people like the micro four thirds just for the compact feel of it. And now we're kind of getting into more of a full frame size body. I mean, even that Leica 10-25 is a huge lens. So I'm just gonna put that in the ugly section just because, you know, previously micro four thirds has been a very compact system, but now we're kind of getting into a heavy, bigger range with the camera. So that's just something to take into consideration if you are considering a GH6, is that it's not going to have the same compact feel as the GH5. So that's kind of the perspective that we're coming from: the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, if you have anything that you would add to this list, you know, I've just got a few things here. If there's anything that you would add to this list Make sure you put that down in the comments and label it good or bad or ugly, whatever that might be. Let me know down in the comments and we can get a conversation going down there. And if you have time, it'd be awesome if you stick around, maybe check out one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.